Hello, and welcome to the Coaching Crowd podcast with me, Jo Wheatley, and my friend and co host, Zoe Hawkins.
Hi, everybody. Good to be here again this week. And we are going to be talking to you about questions that you can use to define your ideal client. And we are in the midst of doing our group and team coaching challenge, where we are working with over 500 coaches, helping them to design and build a group coaching program. And the session we actually did this morning was about ideal client and how to connect your ideal client. So it's fresh in our mind. We know that this is something that coaches struggle with. So it doesn't have to be for a group coaching program. This can be if you're thinking of training to be a coach, or you are a coach and you're working one-to-one with people. This concept of ideal client and how to work through the resistance to be able to build it is something we wanted to share on the podcast today.
Yeah. Sometimes I think the language or the words ideal client can just turn people off and think, oh, it just feels very logical. It doesn't feel very connected, very enjoyable. But I think when we lean into this, we lean into it through a soul connected way. Who is it that when we think of working with them, that something dances and comes alive within us, so we feel so lucky and we want to, our whole body wants to rush over to them. So we explained, I think, many times that we avoided identifying an ideal client, well, for about 7 years because we didn't want to exclude people. It felt like it was a real contradiction to all the values that we hold, that draw us into coaching around empowering others, inclusion, and so on. But actually, the unhooking of this was, well, you can have more than one ideal client. Brilliant. Okay, we're up for that, and we can talk to an ideal client and commit to it for a fixed period of time, and we can review like, oh, what are we learning through that process? And we haven't looked back since we made that decision and freed ourselves to be able to explore things in that way.
Yeah. And I think it's probably worth for those people listening, like, why would you bother having an ideal client? Like, what is an ideal client? And so, for those who haven't heard of this concept before, ideal client is really who you have in mind when you are talking about your services. So if that's a coaching business, when you're, whether it's on social media or you're building a program or you're thinking about a blog post or whatever it is that you're doing, you have your ideal client in mind. And when you say ideal client, as Jay said, it's the person that you want to work with that is going to light you up. Now, it doesn't stop you working with other people. It's just the lens at which you put on all of your activities. Now, why do you do that? The reason you do that is because if you're standing in a room and you're like, oh, hey, like I work with leaders and it's full of leaders, that they're just going to carry on talking because they're all leaders and they're all busy going amongst their day, they're deep in conversation. No one's going to turn around to look at what you're saying. Whereas if you say something like, oh, hey, like, hi, I work with senior leaders in the technology sector that are newly promoted, that are a woman in an all male environment. And, when she goes to bed at night, she's, constantly thinking about all the things that she could have said in that meeting and never got round to saying. And she's beating herself up for, not expressing her opinion. And she wants someone to give her the reassurance that her voice is worth being heard. Well, if you're that person in the room, you're going to turn around and be like, sorry, what did you say? Like, are you talking to me? And you start to pay attention. So it doesn't stop all those other leaders in that room from joining you in that program, but you want people to hear what you have to say. And in order for them to hear what you have to say, you've got to talk to them. You have to talk directly to the things that keep them up at night, their deep desires and aspirations for growth. And so when you do that, your message gets through. And as we know, you want to have an impact in the world. And so you need clients to be able to resonate with what it is you have to share.
I think for me, it's that experience of, I was thinking about, where do we start from? Like, we always start from, I love coaching. And, we see a lot of coaches will talk about coaching and, um, the process of coaching, and they'll talk about, I want to empower people to live their best life. And that's great. And it obviously is coming from a really passionate place. And that is a source of energy and inspiration. But how would somebody know if they're an ideal fit for for the coaching that you do. So a great place to start, if you find it difficult to think about narrowing down who you want to talk to in terms of advertising your services, might be, who are you an ideal client for? Like, what do you know about yourself? What's the level of detail you have about yourself, the things that you love, the things that make you unique in the world? And what would you need to hear if somebody was advertising something to you in order for you to be like, I've just got to do this program? And you and I, Zoe, have had experiences where we've read things and we're like, we've just got to do it. Like, it's just, we're going to do it. And I'm always really, and you and I think, are both really curious about the marketing side of it, because we are in business, we have a business. And I'm always looking, I'm like, right, I'm in, but what is it that you've done? What's the process you've taken me through, the language that you've used that has really made that a compelling offer for me? So once you can start to understand that for yourself, I think it can help you then to shift over and think about, right, okay, so now with my service, sort of reversing that around, who's my ideal client? It may be that that you make a choice around, you work with people that live in a certain area, a certain industry, or so on. That's the very top piece. It's like the very, very top. We want you to get right down under the water to the bottom of the iceberg with that full width around, do they support charities? Do they have pets? What's their favorite sport? What do they do in their spare time? What are the things maybe that they would go on a march for? The things that are their absolute passions in life, because it's all of those things. When you see people on social media and they'll post a picture of a cat, might be you, Zoe, and that post will probably get more likes than anything that they put about the services that they have. But maybe your ideal client is somebody who is also passionate about that too. So I think it's really being able to get into a level of detail where when you speak to that person, they just feel like you can see inside them. And that what it does is it builds trust. It's like, this person knows me, and if they can know me when they haven't even met me, I'm sure that we can do some great work together.
Yeah, and of course it doesn't matter if they do like cats or not, right? Because if you're putting a post up around, oh, I don't know, whatever, yeah, your cat, how big and how fluffy your cat is. Well, the people who like animals are going to engage with that. And people who like animals, well, they're probably people who are deeply compassionate and deeply caring and love nature, so it's not really about whether they have a cat or not. It's really about the type of person who you are, who you're wanting to draw into your world. So yeah, I think those questions that are really specific are helpful. And I think then also the questions that you can ask around, so obviously there's, who is my ideal client? Like, that's the starting point that you work with. And noticing, like, is that easy for you to answer? Because you might be like, oh, it's nurses, easy. Or it's school head teachers, easy. It's cancer survivors, easy. So if it's not easy and you're like, oh, well, it could be this and it could be that and it could be that, oh, I'm not sure. What we said this morning is, like, often that's your own self-doubt masquerading, as fear, as an obstacle, showing up as, I don't know, when in fact you could decide. Like, in that very moment when you're asked the question, decide, like, choose one, pick one. It actually doesn't really matter, because what's going to happen when you pick one is it's going to give you the clarity to have the conversation with your ideal client that matters most. So if there's 3 people who you want to serve, great. Start by serving one of them, because you can then talk to the other 2 later down the line. Now, when you look at our initial ideal client for our coaching training program, we were talking to HR directors, and all the posts that we put out was about wanting an exit plan to leave corporate world, to set up their business one day, to enjoy the parts of the role that light you up, as opposed to the parts of the role that, leave you feeling a bit empty. And today, when you look on our program, we will have driving instructors and yoga instructors and, chartered accountants and military serving personnel. Like, there's not a shade of HR in them, but we still talk to our ideal client. But over time, what happens is your message just resonates more with more and more people. So it's, whilst it felt initially for us to be restrictive, it's actually enabled us to be much more expansive in our business and welcome lots of people into our program, which of course we do. Having an ideal client doesn't stop you and restrict you from working with others. So the simple question that you could start with is, who is my ideal client? And just notice then what is happening in your business, and allow yourself to move through any resistance and emotion to just pick one as a starting point. And you can use the rest of the questions we're going to share with you in this podcast to help you to build out what that person is to you in your business.
But you also have to think about how other people are going to describe who you work with. So if you take our coaching training programs, we're fortunate to be in a position where lots of people that book on our programs have come through recommendations or referrals. And so when they're in having a conversation and perhaps they're talking about doing a coaching training program, says, "Oh, I'm thinking about doing one of those. What's in good company like?" They're going to say, "Oh, what is it you want them to say?" You've got to make it easy for them. Do people go on those programs that go on to want to be coaches themselves, like as professionals? So you're going to learn about your ideal client from your ideal client and listen to the things that people tell you that they're saying about you. So when people contact you and say, "Oh, so and so told me to get in touch with you," they'll usually say, "Because they said you do X or are Y." Make a note of those things, because that's the language that your ideal clients are using. And so I think identifying your ideal client is also noticing the phrases. So we know when people are interested in joining our coaching courses, there's I don't know, 20 different things that they will ask us that they are most interested in. So we can use that in the way that we're talking about our programs. When it comes to one-to-one coaching, I know that the people that love to work with me, well, I talk about working with people who are CEOs or are on a CEO pathway. And I could go into a lot of detail about those people. So, one of the things I would say about those people are that they are worried that they're too sensitive, that is a weakness. They want to be able to align their emotional experiences to the strategic direction and decisions that they're making. That they feel alone in the role that they're in, and they are wondering about their next move, and they're trying to balance their life with their life outside of work, etc., etc., etc. I could go into lots of different detail about that, but also it's about the energy that I have when I'm talking to those individuals, about what I do. And so you and I, Zoe, are really passionate about emotions, hence our emotions coaching practitioner training, and that will turn a lot of people off, and that's okay. That's good, in fact, because then the people that want to come and have coaching with me or come onto our programs, the emotion coaching practitioner, I mean, it's a great space, the emotions coaching practitioner program, isn't it? Because we know every single person that is there understands the importance of emotions in our human experience and coaching their one-to-one clients. So there is already a deep connection between people on the program, and it's that sense of coming home. And it's the same for your ideal client. When they meet you in that coaching space, it is about having that connection. Now, we started off, our ideal client was us a few years before. So that's kind of like an easy starter.
It is interesting, isn't it, when it comes to one-to-one clients, because I've never been my ideal client in coaching. And we get excited, don't we, when we get a coaching client? We're like, "Oh, Joe, like, it's my ideal client.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely
yeah.
love this client." And I remember recently I had two chemistry calls from, very senior leaders in organizations, and one I just knew wasn't my ideal client. And the other one absolutely was. And the one that was my ideal client selected me, and the one that wasn't my ideal client went with another coach. That's a win-win
Mm,
all around.
mm,
I felt good about that, and I'm sure they felt good about the coach they eventually chose.
mm.
And the client that I moved forward with, we had a really powerful coaching experience, which again is another win-win. So the ideal client, the momentum that you get through that, it's just a good experience for everybody, because actually you don't want clients in your services that aren't the right fit for you, because they aren't going to go and recommend your services. They aren't going to, talk amazingly about the experience if it hasn't been a complete fit for them. Now, that's probably contradictory to what I said before around you will attract people who aren't your ideal clients onto your journey, but you'll attract the ones that fit through a different definition. So, as Jo said, if she's talking to an ideal client and talking about her animals as a silly example, well, somebody who is pet free may still resonate with everything else that you say. And so it doesn't mean the program's not a fit for them, but they're going to come and enjoy it. So, what questions you can use to help you to get to that level of inside the client's mind and inside the client's sort of emotional state would be things like, when my client wakes up in the morning, how do they feel? You know, when my client is approaching their day, so perhaps they're going to work, or maybe they're dropping off their children, or maybe they're going to see their elderly parents in care, whatever it is, like, what are the emotions that are circling around their body and their mind? What are the thoughts that they are having as they approach the start of their day? Get into in depth the internal state of your ideal client.
I think that one of the questions for me when I think about ideal client is how do they self-identify? So when I'm thinking about, and this is both ways in a way. So I think if I saw a program or an experience identified and it was about, it was listing who the ideal client was, and one of the things was that they were kind, that would grab me because I want to be with kind people in my life, and I hope that that people experience me as being kind. But also my ideal clients are kind people. So when I'm thinking about the coaching client that I had the chemistry call with recently that I'm going to be working with, we were in flow and it was a really enjoyable conversation. I knew they were enjoying it because I felt it, and I felt I was enjoying it, and I knew they felt that too. And I think part of the connection was because I identified them as having a kindness. So they are a senior leader, but there is that part of them. Now that's just an everyday word. So you could think, oh, that wouldn't be worth including in an ideal client description. But as part of the other factors, that for me definitely is resonant. And so I would include that, both ways as I've described.
I think it's really important to use everyday language when you talk about your ideal client. So, you see a lot of what I would describe as like coach speak, releasing potential. So like, are you somebody who wants to release your potential? I mean, I've never met anybody that walks around saying, "Oh, I'd just love to release my potential." Like that's a coach speak. Like people are walking around saying things like, I you know I don't feel like I'm working at my best, or my line manager doesn't understand me, or this work isn't very fulfilling. It's those terms that people are using, which means the same. It means like, I don't feel like I'm releasing my potential, but that's not what people are saying. So I think when another question that you can ask when you think about your ideal client is, what's the conversation that they are having? If they're chatting to their partner or their best friend or their sister or their mom or whoever is important to them in their life, and they are asked the question, so how's it going? What's their response? In everyday language, what are they going to say? Are they going to say, oh, yeah, it's great. I love my job. I'm really excited about the prospects at the company. I can't wait, for my upcoming review. I'm on the cusp of promotion. And, I just really hope that I'm doing everything that I need to do to get the promotion? Or are they going to say like, feel empty? I just feel like something's missing in my career. I don't know what it is, but I don't know, maybe I've been in this role for too long. Because if you put on your sales page, or or in your material somewhere, are you a leader who feels empty? Are you a leader who feels like they might have been in their role for too long but isn't sure? As opposed to, are you a leader who's ready to release your potential and explore uncharted territories? Well, no one's having that conversation. And so it's just not going to resonate with people easily. they'll have to stop and really think and interpret what it is you're trying to say.
I think sometimes a useful springboard for identifying your ideal client and getting started in this. And by the way, I would encourage you to write stuff down and not have this conversation about your ideal client in your head. I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, is they spend loads of time thinking about it, but never actually capture it somewhere. But I think a useful question to help you get started is, who do you know is definitely not your ideal client? Because I'm pretty sure that something would have come immediately into your mind as I asked that question, and you heard it and took that in. Capture that. It may or may not be true for you, but there'll be a reason why that came into your head, and some work to do around that. And then again, and why is that particular characteristic not an ideal client? Why is it important to you not to work with those people? And then obviously on the flip side of that, when you start to identify even one characteristic which you think, yeah, that's my ideal client, like, why is that important to you? And the answer, why is that important to you? And why is that important to you? Because from that, you'll probably find that you start to branch out with other things popping into your mind about your ideal client. Do you need to do this in one sitting? No. Can you? Yes. Like, if you really get into flow and let it be a stream of consciousness and not worry about what anybody else would think about your ideal client. This is just about you. And most people come into coaching because they are mission led. What is your mission? What is the legacy you want to create in the world? And who are the people that you want to work with in order to achieve that? That's kind of coming back to you as well. So there are different layers and angles of this. So other questions there for you to ask yourself or ponder on.
Yeah. I just want to go back to what I said before around language, because I just want, people listening to us will know this. It's without shame that I say that. Like, if you go to my website now, you will find coach speak on my website. I think I even talk about, like, do you want to be an extraordinary leader? I mean, I don't think there's any leader that's asking if they want to be extraordinary, right? So the ideal client, it's a journey. Like, it will evolve over time. And my website now is probably 3 years old. And you and I have had discussions, and we both of us want to refresh our website. It's
I want
something
to
that's
take it down.
It's been sat there for such a long time. It doesn't really represent who I am anymore. Like, there's obviously flavors of it in there, but like, I'm more interested now in working with like spiritually curious leaders, like those people who are wanting to um bring some of that into their leadership. That's exciting to me. It's an ideal client I've not explored or not talked to before. So your ideal client isn't going to stay still and static forever, because you're going to evolve, and therefore your style, your container, the way you coach, all of that's going to evolve as well. So it's without shame. So when you go to define your ideal client, just, what's the ideal client that's right for me right now? Like, that can be an easier question to answer than, what's my ideal client that I'm going to base my entire business on for the next millennium? Like, no, what's the right one right now?
I also think it might be helpful when you're starting this work or building this work out to think, during your career or during your life, who have been the people, let's say 2 people, that you most enjoyed working with, that maybe relate to the coaching that you're doing? And I imagine it will in some way relate to it. And just start writing about them. What is it that you know about them that related to that relationship and what you enjoyed from it? And then when you've written those things down without the pressure of the ideal client, but just reflecting on those things, that might help you to get started and creating a networking map. Who who you've worked with. There may be people that you looked up to, for example, in your career, that you always thought, that would be my ideal client. I'd love to work with people like that. Like, I know I love to work with ambitious people, heart-led, but ambitious people that want to do the work, that are prepared to go deep in their reflections, that are courageous in that are straight talking, that that have that excitement, that glint in their eye, that really want to create that want to do good in the world, but also have other things going on in their lives. But maybe just think about who are the people that stand out when you reflect on your life to date as being key figures? Because I think that you'll probably find there's a connection to your ideal client there.
So we posed lots of questions for you today and obviously talked around the subject. And I think we'll part with, just encouraging you to move through the resistance and move through the emotions to make any choice about your ideal client and commit to an experiment like Joe and I did. Just commit to an experiment. Maybe that's 30 days or 90 days or 6 months, whatever you feel you've got energy for, and watch what happens. Watch your level of engagement when you really target your sort of conversations and marketing, if you like, to the ideal client that you have in mind. And for those of you who were part of our challenge, you'll know that we have a signature group and team coaching program that is out and available for registration right now. It's a special cohort that we've put together for people who are on that challenge, who are interested in bringing a group coaching program to the world. That's available for sale until the 18th of November. And you can find that on our website at igcompany.co.uk/group. And that is our Foundations of Group and Team Coaching program, where part of it is about a business module, which is helping you to define your ideal client and bring your group coaching program to life. But if you're going to do this work, you want to be brilliant at it, and you want to go in with both confidence and competence to do a great job. And our Foundations of Group and Team Coaching is going to prepare you to be able to do that, to move from one-to-one into group work. So join us there at igcompany.co.uk/group.